how is the European Union regulating all things digital? Well, it's got some pretty tough rules, especially to protect users, but hasn't gone too far. Well, here are some highlights of a Euronews debate where we explore just how to adjust those regulations to make Europe more competitive. Well, first, let's take a look at the impact of the regulations so far. Why simplification now? Why now?
Well, very timely question. I think the strategic unity, the strategic calling that the member states in the EU right now have among them is to really how reinvigorate economic growth. What the EU does the best, the EU is good at throwing money at things and regulating things. There's not that much else that the EU can do, and I don't really mean it in a bad sense, but I think that the EU is not a state. It cannot really be compared in the same sense as the US or China, but it's an economic entity, and it has to do things that the politicians are asking it to do, and therefore we have a simplification agenda as a strategic unity call.
One concrete example of what we need to simplify.
For the country from which I come from, for instance, GDPR is I would say, a boogeyman for excessive bureaucratic outreach because people have to fill a couple of forms in situations where they really see no benefit of doing so.
And death by cookies.
Death by cookies is an element that everybody knows, and everybody just absent-mindedly click on that. And I think we are past that point that the usefulness for improvement of people's general well-being was there. Probably it's not there anymore.
So that's the state of play. Now, how do we fine-tune those regulations to spur the economy and still protect users? Well, it's a tricky balance to strike. Let's take a look.
I think that my main takeaway and interpretation is let's make the single market a reality. Making the market concrete and the unity of it is probably the most important thing that could happen. And my message today is, yes, simplification, yes, single market, institution, you have the duty to, make it happen.
But can you give a concrete example of how Qualcomm feels straitjacketed by whatever among these new regulations, DSA, DMA, GDPR, AI Act? How much is that restricting you?
Well, for us, it's not just about the restriction, it's how we're going to make sure that we are compliant and we are sophisticated enough to have legal team helping us to make sure that before the text is fully adopted, we are prepared. But that is, in a way, a constraint in the sense that you have teams.
You have a battery of lawyers to deal with that. You used to be a legal counsel for the French government, so you know all about that.
But not everybody can have the battery of lawyers.
SMEs can't.
Yes.
That's true.
It's true. So that's the example.
Yeah. Marco, how about you? What's been your experience? What's Meta's experience with dealing with these regulations?
So first, let me start to say that Europe has all the elements to be successful in the digital sector, and these glasses are actually a great example. But for example, for these glasses, there is a specific piece of regulation which would require us to make the battery that is powering these glasses be replaceable. And this is creating a huge challenge from engineering and designing point of view, because these glasses are designed to be light. And if you need to make the battery replaceable, this design will have to change and will be more bulky and more difficult to wear and more difficult to design. So but this is just a small example to tell you that, yes, indeed, big companies in a partnership with European companies can create great innovation. But we are talking about more than 250 regulators across Europe that are looking at digital sector, more than 80 pieces of legislation that passed in the last 5 years. This is like a burden that is really creating a risk and complexity for companies to innovate, or companies to strive.
How much are you worried about political headwinds? Here's a comment from the Socialists and Democrats. Irache Garcia, who's head of the S&D, says, the dynamic of omnibuses with an absolute deregulation zeal is buying into Trump's agenda. Do you agree with that?
I would doubt that, because I think we're doing that for ourselves, as far as I know. There's zero link done at the council level between these two. There's very limited push from the US to do any specific kind of deregulation deals. Well, you see it everywhere, that there is outbursts of communication from across the ocean about what we should do here or what we should not do here. It never reaches this kind of level. Okay, we'll ease up here, will you strengthen up there? These kind of deals are actually quite rare in global politics, as far as I know.
Marco, what about... and you'd like to see a pragmatic approach to AI regulation, artificial intelligence regulation. What do you mean by that, pragmatic?
Look, I really think a pragmatic approach would have been to stop the clock, take a step back. Let's look at the legislative framework that we created around AI in Europe, and let's try first to stop for the moment the enforcement, but also to understand if this framework is fit for the purpose of the goals and the fears that we had when we passed this.
Okay, with the modifications, Audrey, that we see that are proposed by the Commission, do you think that's fit for purpose? Do you think it's enough?
It's difficult to answer to you, but I think that if we have the ambition with the support, I would say, of the Council and the Parliament, and if this is happening, this is already, from my perspective, a big win. So in the telecom sector, where I'm most part of, but a number of CEOs have been begging for more simplification, for having more like a level playing field, whatever you want to call it, okay? So it's not new. What is new is that this, I would say, massive movement that we are seeing right now, and we don't talk enough about the talent and all the creativity and innovation that we do have in Europe. What we are missing is scaling. And regulation is part of the problem, but not just the problem. But if everything we would do for the next 5 years, that's my call for action, we'll go innovation first, competitiveness first, and just do it. So not 25 priorities, like less than 5.
Right.
And execute fast. That would be my call for action.
And finally, let's look ahead. How do we future-proof digital regulation and keep it effective for people, for businesses? Well, here are some ideas.
I think where we have a problem is that we stuck too much into this conversation about regulation without thinking two things. First, that if we don't fall in love with the future, there will be no economy that we will need to regulate in the future very soon, because we will only look at the past, we will only look at this aspect without thinking about what is going to be the future for our kids.
Right.
In terms of investment, companies like Meta, but not only Meta, are investing a lot in creating the infrastructure around AI that can help the whole ecosystem through partnership, through collaboration, to grow and create jobs and create richness. We invested something like 72 billion only last year in infrastructure around AI.
To echo what Marco said, this innovation first principle should be like the North Star. And innovation doesn't have to be only tech, by the way. It can be broader. You can think about innovation in health sector as an example. But this should be is it really serving the purpose? Why? Do we have a necessity test as an example? And does it bring scale or does it bring fragmentation? If you do already this, then you have a good sense of where this could go. Then you can think, do we need this 5 to 10 years down the road?
Yeah, well, sometimes it's not possible to know.
No,
and then sometimes, when I was in the Parliament and talking with parliamentarians about the AI Act, pretty much it was already dated and passé by the time it was approved. So, how do you stay a step ahead with regulation like that when the technology is moving so fast? Štěpán, you want to talk about that?
I think that's actually, regulation is not a bad word in itself. In many cases, regulation is addressing a genuine social concern, and it's a noble purpose, and everybody would agree that we are addressing some abuse and some deficiencies.
Now, Audrey, I think you have the point that battery regulation was a bit of a mistake, right? That wasn't quite done right. How do we learn from that and do better regulation?
Listen, maybe mistake is not the correct word, but the aim of this battery regulation was very good. It was, you buy a product, an electrical product, and you should not be, as a consumer, limited in your freedom to buy something because the battery will die. It's exactly the problem.
With the battery in your glasses.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Final thought from Marco, fall in love with the future. Where do you see it in 5 years?
Actually, yes, you are reading my mind. No, but seriously, the simplification exercise is an incredible opportunity that Europe cannot lose. And it's not about looking at the past and selling the rights that we have and the values that we have. It's about really to make sure that we are building these rules for the future, to make sure that our kids will have jobs, that Europe will be a continent where competitiveness, not just competitiveness, but productivity, we can create the condition for this continent to remain relevant in the world economy, because otherwise it's going to become a beautiful museum. We are going to have a lot of values, a lot of rights. At the same time, we are not going to have a future. So we need a balance. We not have to discuss the rights that were acquired, but we need to create the condition to have a future.
That's it for now on this Euronews debate. You can see the full version on the link below. And this story definitely has legs, so keep an eye on EuronewsTV.com and the social nets. I'm Chris Burns. Thanks for watching.